Migration in the period between 1750 and 1914 took on various forms. Western Europeans continued to colonize and settle regions of the Americas, India, Africa, and the Pacific, and Southeast Asia well into the 18th century. Settler colonies not only brought about rivalries between Europeans and native peoples, but also, like the Columbian Exchange of the 16th and 17th centuries, exposed indigenous peoples to European diseases. Among the victims of disease were the Maoris of New Zealand, whose population was reduced by about a third, and native Hawaiians, over half of whom fell to diseases like tuberculosis and syphilis. The decimation of the Hawaiian population created a need for imported workers, and in the late 1800s, workers from China and Japan arrived in the Hawaiian Islands and transmitted their culture to the islands. The need for labor in various regions of Latin America in the late 19th century produced a flood of immigration from Europe to Brazil and Argentina. Many of the newcomers to Brazil were immigrants from Portugal and Italy who came to work on Brazil's coffee plantations. Because of the physical strength required to carry out plantation labor, most of these migrants were male, leaving women to remain in their home countries and assume new roles in society. Some of these Italian immigrants returned to Italy part of the year to work the crops there, but others remained in Latin America permanently, adding a European flair and a new diversity to Brazil and Argentina. And like we talked about earlier, Russians, Germans, and Jews contributed to this migration as well. Effects of migration in Africa. Well, we had changes in demographics. In Africa, the European imperialist powers promoted large-scale single-crop farming for export. Huge numbers of male workers left their homelands and migrated to large farming areas. Other men sought job opportunities in Africa's larger cities. Women coped by taking on responsibilities that had once been primarily men's work, like trade, growing crops for home use, and mining. Resentment against migrants led to a huge influx of migrants meeting resistance from many who had established themselves previously in the receiving lands. Besides personal displays of prejudice, legal restrictions on migrations also began to appear, like the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act in the United States, which prevented large numbers of Chinese immigrants moving to the country, and it limited the amount of people who could move to the country from China each year and where they could live. And also the White Australian Act of 1901. Population shifts. Through the 19th and into the early 20th century, about 60 million people left Europe. Almost all went to the Americas, and about 30 million of those Europeans entered the United States. About 2.5 million people left China between 1850 and 1900. Most went to the United States and western portion of South America. An estimated 45 million people migrated from South Asia to Southeast Asia, among the Indian Ocean region and into the South Pacific, and roughly 50 million people left Western Russia and Northeast Asia for Japan, Manchuria, Siberia, and Central Asia. So you can see during this time period, we had a lot of people moving around. So just to kind of wrap up, improvements in medical practices and sanitation, as well as widespread consumption of the potato, increased populations in various world regions. The crowded populations of industrial cities presented new problems in housing developments. Although medical knowledge improved throughout the years, pollution in industrial urban areas presented new health issues. Colonization brought new contacts between East and West, including the spread of epidemic disease. At the same time, European migrants to the Western Hemisphere contributed customs that enriched the cultural landscape of the Americas. Increased leisure time created popular interest in the science and the arts. And that's it for 5.4.